Hello everybody and welcome to Skrrt Garage. My name is Connor and on this episode I'm going to show you guys how to replace your radiator and your automatic transmission cooler in your Lexus ISF. Now, I'm sure you guys want to know a little bit more about how much time it takes, the cost, and what replacement parts you will need, and I have all of that for you guys. So with that, let's get this video started. Okay, first off, let's talk about the time requirement that this DIY takes. For me, it took about four and a half hours, and I think that you could speed it up a little bit, but I really don't see it happening any faster than 3 hours. Now, let's talk about the cost. So I chose to buy an aftermarket radiator, and I thought that that would be the wisest decision because the main reason why these radiators are breaking on the Lexus ISF or any of the F cars with the big 5-liter engine, they're breaking because there's a seal in between the aluminum radiator and the top and bottom pieces of it, which are plastic. That breaks, and then all of a sudden all the coolant starts rushing out in between those junctions. So I went ahead and bought an all aluminum larger radiator from Koyorad, and it was really the only aftermarket option that was available for this engine. I got it for about $380, $400, something like that. The next thing that you'll have to buy is a automatic transmission fluid cooler or a transmission cooler. Those will actually detach themselves from your radiator. So on this platform, I guess I should back up and tell you, the radiator has the job of cooling the coolant, but it also has the job of cooling the automatic transmission fluid. So you actually have to run a separate transmission cooler if you do this aftermarket option. That's what I did. I bought the Hayden 678. I don't know exactly what the number is, but I can leave it in the link below in the description box. Okay, now let's talk about the tools that you'll need. For the most part, it's pretty simple stuff. It's a Lexus product, Toyota product, so there's a lot of 10mm bolts. You guys may also need a few different sets of pliers, some that are real large for like piping or large hoses. There is a lot of that in this when doing the job. So get a few different sets of pliers and oh yeah, coolant. You will need coolant because you're gonna have to drain the old batch of coolant that's in there. You don't have to do a full drain, but at least the front part of the engine, which is the radiator and the hoses up front. I went ahead and did a little extra, so I had to buy 3 gallons of coolant. You guys may only need 1 or 2, depending on how much draining and refilling you want to do. Lastly, I would recommend that you buy 1 jug or 1 quart of automatic transmission fluid from Toyota or Lexus. But with that, guys, that's pretty much everything. You know the cost, you know the time, you know which tools you need, and now you guys should be ready to get this DIY done. So with that, let's go ahead and get it started. One more thing I do want to mention, guys, is that I know that this video is not the sexiest. I know that there's no tire smoke or racing, but when I did this job, I did look to see if I could find any good write-ups or videos on how to, and I did not find a single one on YouTube. So I'm making this to help you guys and the rest of the YouTube community if they have to do this job. So please give it a positive comment down below and a big thumbs up. With that, let's get started. Okay, let me just show you what happened. First thing, I took off the engine cover. I took off the little trim pieces that go around here just to get a little bit better access to show you guys. But you can kind of make out down here that there's a little bit of coolant. You can see some kind of spilled onto this, a little that is spilled onto that as well. Here's my little oil catch can makeshift. I can show you guys how to do this at a later date, but if you look closely all along right here, you can see that there's just a pink line. And as I said earlier, this happened literally as I was pulling into my garage. So that was really nice, and that's probably the only reason it's not just caked with coolant in here. But
Long story short, like I said, the radiator itself has a plastic top and bottom, and the radiator is metal, and over time they just kind of give out. And for that reason, we are going to upgrade it. We're going to upgrade it with an all aluminum one, excuse me. It is a Koyorad. This is probably, I mean, I've seen advertisements of it being like 30% bigger, which would be great if it can help cool the car down when we are on track. I also bought a separate oil cooler. I've heard really good things about this, so I'm really excited about it. All right, update. The car is up in the air. We've got it on some ramps in the back, and Jack's here with the jack stands holding everything up. And this is what I think I'm gonna do. I'm gonna actually take the front bumper off. I know it's not necessary, but I'd like to do it because I am gonna be hooking up an aftermarket oil cooler, and so I kind of want to get a good idea of where everything's going to go. If you see, this actually is the old oil cooler, or the current oil cooler, and you can see the two lines just right down here for it. So I kind of want to take everything off so that when I hook the new lines up, I can see it and I know it's going to look real good. So how you do that is actually really easy. You take this little 10mm bolt off, and that's everything for the front part. After that, it's freely movable, just like you see here. Then you come over to the side, and then there's 1, 2, 3 little screws, and then you go underneath the car, and there's like 7 more spanning from one side to the other, and then the whole front bumper comes off, and it's really pretty easy. There we go. So once you twist it and it now is kind of horizontal, you can press on it a little bit, then you can weasel this in and you can pull it out. So that's what it looks like. They're vertical, you turn them horizontal, and then you can weasel them out. There's 2, one here, one here, one here, one here, and then up here, if you pull this little thing out, you can just make out a 10mm bolt right there. So once we get this one out, I'll pull it out and get that 10mm bolt. Okay, with that, everything should be ready to go. This should be able to pop off, and everything is off underneath. So I'm just by myself, so I'm gonna have to use both hands here. But as I unhook it, there's 2 spots, one here and one over there for the radar. So I will, of course, get those, and then we will be ready to rock. Okay, what you did not see was me unhooking this right here. And then there are 2 hooks on this side. This top one goes right there, and this bottom one right here comes up underneath, and it goes into that little area right there. So with that off, you can actually grab this like foam piece, remove it, and then you have all this access to the front bumper. We're gonna go ahead and move down towards the bottom, and there's just a bunch of 10mm under here, guys.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
So yeah, just a lot. We're gonna have to take off all of them. I think it starts right here on this first one. So we'll get off all of those, and then just to keep everything in track, we'll go ahead and put these bolts inside of this thing, and we'll set it out of the way. Okay, so from the bottom, you're gonna grab this right here. You're gonna twist it, and as you spin it out, it will let the coolant out. So we're gonna let that drain, and as that's draining, we'll head back up to the top, and we'll do the removal of the shelf up there. It helps if you open this up. It'll drain a lot faster. Okay, so while that's draining, I think I'm going to actually start by removing some of these T-bar bolts, and at the same time I'll start kind of moving the connectors right here. There's just one held in place and another one right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab that bolt on the bottom. Let me show you where it's at. Let's see. Oh, it's right there. Okay, so you can get to it right here. Okay, let me keep everybody posted. I took the T-bar like this, I lifted it up and over. It's hard to do with one hand. But I lifted it up and over, and now I can pretty much have whatever kind of access I want to the radiator. The front part of the radiator, see this little 10mm bolt here? This is held on to, oh, I sound like an idiot. I think it's the condenser. I think the condenser's up here and the fan's behind it. So now I can take the condenser off, I can lay that forward, and then I can take the fan shroud off and lay that back, and I think this should come up in one. We're gonna cross our fingers. I could be wrong here, guys, and if I am, I'm sorry, but let's find out. This piece right here needs to come off, and it's really easy. All you do is you grab two little pop outs, one right here and one right there. So super easy. And after that, there is one little clip right here, and it's not even a clip. All you have to do is pull the entire unit forward. I don't know if I can do it one-handed, or I'll try. You grab it and you pull it forward. Okay, now that it's off, underneath, all you have to do is pull down and it'll pop off this side one. But this whole thing is about to move forward. So I'm gonna put you over here for a second. And the two bolts I need to access, one is right here, and one is right there, so you can kind of see it. There and there. Once I undo those two, I've already done these two up here. This fan shroud, or not fan shroud, what am I talking about? Condenser will lean forward. So again, took off these two screws. Then I took off this little hose that goes into the radiator. This is the radiator right here. Then this is the thermostat housing, I believe, and the hose also comes from this to that. So I'm gonna take that off real quick. Right there, and right there. So, I haven't done much down here, to be honest. I still need to take this off. This is the lower hose for the coolant. So that needs to come off probably first. We'll do that, we'll get it out of the way, and then we'll start worrying about the other couple lines. Like I told you earlier, the radiator also has the job of cooling the transmission fluid, and that actually comes in through some hard lines right here. So they originate up here, and they're coming down, and then they kind of branch off, one here, one there. they go up and over this bar and they insert over there and right here. So what I'm gonna do first is take this off, the big hose. Then I'm gonna take this off, clamp the line, or plug the line better, to make sure that I'm not losing any automatic transmission fluid. Then I'm gonna plug this line. Everything will be off and removed line-wise from the radiator. And then these two kind of metal tubes, they're connected right here, one of them, and another one right there. It's not needed because what we're gonna do is actually bypass this whole thing, and we're gonna connect these right here, this metal line, to the metal line back that way. So imagine these two hoses, instead of running all the way on the bottom of this radiator, what they're gonna do is these two hoses are gonna come up and they're gonna join with these two metal hard lines, and that's it. That's all we have to do. So disconnect everything and then we'll get everything swapped out. So what I'm going to do is have this bucket kind of here on standby, and I'm going to quickly try to plug up this hose with a bolt in order to minimize the losses. So let me do that real quick. Okay, this is everything off and kind of what it looks like. I think in hindsight, I would have just taken off the fan shroud, or I would have just left it connected. I still would have undone everything like I did, but leave the fan shroud connected when taking it out. There's a couple things like specifically this right here and this that kept getting caught on the fan shroud on its exit. So just go ahead and leave it attached. While I have so much access to the transmission lines right here and the front of everything right here and kind of how it all works together back there, I think what I'm gonna do is now install the transmission cooler. So I think what I'm going to do is this. You can see the metal piece right here. I'm going to leave that and I'm going to take off these pieces right here, and I'm going to take that hose, both of those, I'm going to connect them straight back to these two metal flanges up here. So instead of having the hose go to this other metal piece that's no longer necessary, we're going to take this off and we're going to just go straight to these two lines. And I don't think anyone's ever showed that on camera, so I want to show you guys. All right, a couple things. These are the old lines right here to the transmission cooler. And they are obviously inserted right here. There's a bracket right here that if you take it off, this little metal line will come off, and it's so much easier to get these clips on and off and to get everything kind of adjusted the way you like it. So I highly recommend you remove this bolt right here, you take this off, then you can plug up these two. Once those two are unplugged, you can go underneath the car and get everything situated the way you like it. This is how I have it. Pretty standard, honestly, just having the two lines running over. But yeah, now we're done. So the next thing we're gonna do is remove this transmission cooler itself. Once it's off, we'll then figure out how we're gonna mount up the other one, and we'll obviously reconnect the lines. All right, I've cut this hose. It's gonna attach right here, and I'm going to orientate this transmission cooler vertically. You have to fill this up all the way before you attach it. So I'm gonna attach the lower part, then I'm gonna fill this portion up top. Once it's all the way filled, I'll then just snap it onto the top part, and then I'll be done. Okay, all right, so this is now attached, and it's attached here. What I'm gonna do is put this one up top, and then I'm gonna fill this transmission cooler, and then I'm gonna attach them, then move everything up. The easiest way to do it is to grab some soap, and you can spray just a tiny bit of soapy water on here or just inside this hose. It'll go on, and then, you know, within a few minutes the soap will dry and you have to worry about any contamination. Okay, well, everything is done here. I've got everything taken care of. I had a little bit too much slack here, so I put a zip tie between this line, this hole I should say, and the line. It's gonna kind of help it kink a little better so that when I do end up putting it upright like this, it'll stick better. But I'm gonna let this kind of hang in this position for, I guess, a while until I can get the radiator settled. So let me come over here. The radiator is looking good. I went ahead and, like the OEM one, I went ahead and put this type of foam all the way around it on the sides and on the bottom. Now I'm gonna flip it over and add the fan shroud to the back of it, and then we'll be ready to hook everything back up and put it in the car. All right, we're going to start putting everything back on. I've got the radiator with the fan shroud in. This little thing is gonna hook in here, right here. That clip actually broke off. Right here, here, and then right there. Beyond that, this is the hose that goes from the thermostat here down to the radiator. It looks like this. So this will need to go on as well. Once that is on, then we can do some of the easier stuff. We're gonna get this actually more firm. It'll sat on there pretty good. We'll get it tied down. This piece I'm gonna go ahead and put on now. It's gonna go just right underneath here. So I will go ahead and do that. And then I can start putting this back on, the reservoir, and we'll be pretty much there, guys. It's moving a lot quicker now that I'm putting everything back on. So let's keep going. All right, a couple tips on refilling and bleeding the coolant on your Lexus ISF. Now, it's gonna go against every grain in your body, but you must, and I mean, you don't have to, but I would highly recommend that you when you first start to bleed it, I want you to overfill. This is the reservoir. I want you to overfill the reservoir like to here, way up here, because this is like kind of a different radiator setup to most. Most radiators, you have a top to the radiator, then you have your bleeder, and then you have your reservoir. But because we don't have the top to the radiator, we have to completely fill it with this reservoir. So what ends up happening is you fill this up to full, you begin bleeding, and then you come back out in like 2 minutes, and then it's completely empty here. And so you kind of go through this back and forth thing of filling it up to full, then only really filling the radiator, and then coming back and this is completely empty. So from the start, even Toyota recommends that you fill it almost like way up here, then you start your bleeding procedure, and then you'll probably still end up filling this a couple more times after. What I did is I ended up filling this thing to full 3 separate times and bleeding it 3 separate times because I thought that it was crazy to overfill this on the first go. So just a word to the wise. Another thing I want you guys to pay attention to is when you are bleeding it, you're trying to get all the air bubbles from the engine or wherever else the coolant is traveling to come out through the nose right here. So I recommend that you guys park on an incline or jack the front of the car up. That way the air can try to move towards the front of the car when you're doing your bleeding. Another thing I highly recommend is that inside of your car, you turn your heat on and you have it on full blast. The very first time I started to bleed this, I had the heat on high, and while I was in there, it was not getting hot at all. And lo and behold, my engine temperature started to rise, and all that means is that there's still air in the system. So you have to fill this up again. You have to wait till everything's cool, fill it all up, and begin the bleeding procedure all over again. I'm not gonna lie guys, this took me like 45 minutes just to bleed. So definitely take your time. And I will even mention that I had to fill the I had to fill the coolant reservoir up again the day after I drove it. And then since then, everything's been perfect. But I just wanted to get those things to you before I wrap this video up. But now that you know how to bleed and some of the things to watch out for, I think you guys are ready. So thank you for watching this video, and we will see you next time. Peace.